In the category of housing of less than 30 units, the judges really enjoyed this small everyday project in Merrow, where the project takes a listed building and converts it into flats, and then a modern, contemporary designed house has been built in the playground of the former school. And the judges have given this a commendation. We were very pleased with the way the buildings sat within the street and the way the new house, although simply designed, was very contemporary and fitted in with the Victorian architecture of the rest of the streetscape. And I'm here today with the architect, Felix Lewis, and I'm going to ask Felix a few key questions. So, Felix, when you were first presented with this unloved old school, what were the objectives that you wanted to achieve?
Obviously, change of use is obviously what we needed to look at, and it was this, very attractive locally listed building, and it was looking at the site, and there was a gap site next to it, which obviously lends itself to development to continue the urban fabric of these small kind of worker houses down the road. The road itself has got a lot of historic buildings on it. It's quite unusual for that particular bit of Guildford, in the sense of if you look at the map of it, it's a particularly dense street, and it's got a collection of detached and semi-detached houses, kind of late Victorian, early Edwardian for most of them, and varied materials as well. So there's brick and there's render, there's some stone flint buildings, sometimes a mixture of the two, and the inevitable 20th century infills that have happened over time. This site has got one of the larger buildings on the street, this old school building. It's got some lovely brick detailing on it, and that was the thing that immediately sort of came to mind as architects, was how can you reinvigorate this attractive building without overdeveloping the site, really. And looking at the gap site side of it was a two-stage problem. It was one was, what are we going to do with the gap site there? How can we design a house or flats that we're going to basically fit in with the street scene, be respectful for its neighbours, but whilst doing something that was contemporary and very much of its time? And the second thing was, how are we going to convert the school building? What can we get within there?
And when you got underway with the project, what were the challenges that you had to solve to actually put this project together?
The main school building itself is not quite 2 stories high. So the first floor, some of it's almost in the loft. So we looked at exposing this rather attractive roof structure at first floor. And when you're looking at the building from the street, you've got the main gable end, the school hall building, and then to the left of it, there's a slightly smaller gable that's part of it. And how do you, at first floor, get under the valley and into the next part of the building? It poses its own challenges, because as you come around to the side of the building, there is an unattractive extension which we demolished and rebuilt, but there aren't any windows on the ground floor there. So how do you get natural light into this 3-bedroom maisonette? The units at the front, there were technical challenges of this rather lovely arch, sort of neo-Gothic type window at the front. Actually, we've got a different flat above that and below that. So from an acoustic perspective, there are technical challenges of dividing floors across windows, things like that. And then at roof level, putting new dormers in, but recreating the dormers that are already there to make it look like part of the original building. On the other side of the site, where we're doing the house, the problems are quite different. That was much more about how does this fit in with the streetscape. And as you go down the road and you're looking at it, you've got a combination of gable ends. Sometimes the gables are perpendicular or parallel to the street. Sometimes they're semi-detached houses, sometimes they're detached. But they do have a kind of overriding feel to it. Even though the aesthetic is quite varied, there's a definite feel to the street, and it was creating something of the right scale, really, and picking up on the architectural vocabulary of the road. It was creating a brick building, but a 21st century brick building, but built on the heritage of that particular piece of road. A lot of particularly larger scale architecture in the recent decades, there's been a lot of kind of look at me kind of slightly shouty architecture. There are some people that try and take that down to a smaller scale, but I think in some ways it's much better to be understated about it, really. I think you end up with a better product, and it's something I think is more accessible to more people. I'd like to think that house will be the way that it is. Someone will strip out the kitchen, put a new bathroom in, do all those things that changes over time. Someone will put an air source heat pump in the not too distant future. Those kind of things can change, but I think the best houses are the ones that kind of stay largely as they are, with a little bit of internal reconfiguration, because when you go in, it's always in the right place. The window's in the right place with the kitchen sink. The oven's in the right place. the bathroom's in the right place, and you go into somewhere and you just kind of feel when it feels right.
And now when you come back to the building and you see this group of buildings sitting in Down Road, which aspect of the project gives you the most delight?
For me, it's the fact that it's two different projects in one. It's the refurbishment of the existing building, and it's creating a new house. And the two things being really quite different, and how you make the two work together without being a replica of another one. It would have been easier, in inverted commas, to have chosen the same brick, chosen a similar kind of window on the front of it. But I think it would have been a bit of a cop-out. And it's doing something that's a little bit different is a bit I like the most.